¿Qué hay detrás? ¿Qué hay detrás de cada una de las versiones de GeneXus? Esta versión de GeneXus que
There you have every single version, and this new version has over 500 lines. And what is behind all this? Our promise to create, evolve, and maintain unprecedented software solutions automatically. This is not just words. It's part of our development team and GeneXus team. We've tried to understand what is it that we don't understand, what things are the ones that we have to leave aside and the ones that we have to keep. Behind every single GeneXus version, we have these thoughts. What things are there in terms of technology and what things we have to evolve. I've called it a short-term talk, because when we think about the medium term, it's too long. We're thinking in the context of 3 or 6 months, and we can show you in this talk what things we are working on, and you'll be able to go deeper in them in the event. One of them is what we think is happening from the standpoint of technology. The other thing is how we build these apps with GeneXus. As regards the platform, well, we've solved it quite easily, because I told Jose Labas to help me out and to explain to me how the GeneXus platform was going to work. And so that I can simply focus on understanding and explaining what we think is going on in the world of technology. Jose will be referring to the platform as GeneXus M, GeneXus server, and I will be dealing with what's going on in the world of technology. What type of apps do we have to build at present? Because there are many trends and many things that we have to look into. We have to pay attention, and I'd like to tell you what's happening with GeneXus. I think that the summary of what we think is happening in technology is that there are many trends and technologies that are in transit. We can talk about artificial intelligence, blockchain, bio, and so on. But IoT. But there are many technologies in transit, and we have to pay attention, because there are people who are more advanced, others that are not, and we have to pay attention because we have to find out about those technologies. Now, basically, for you to understand this, I try, well, to divine in some way what for. We're not simply talking about blockchain because we want to talk about blockchain, but what for? What for in artificial intelligence? So I'm going to divide it into two things, things that are in transit in the user world, and things that in the enterprise world that are in transit. And these two worlds should run as parallel as possible. Sometimes worlds mix up, but what our users want is to solve problems. They don't want to know all the technology underlying the things that make the resolution of the problems possible. So let's start then with the user world. What is it that is in transit and that we've discussed this morning? And that's the question of the multi-experience. Now, multi-experience is a term that Gartner Consultant is talking about. We are in transit moving from a single experience world to a multiple experience world. Now, it's clear that we are not, as we said, one single experience era. When we were doing things for texts, and then we went into the Windows world, and then we went to the web world, and so on. But we are in transit, trying to build multiple experiences, and we shouldn't get mixed up when we are in transit and start comparing technologies that we have to build. It's not a question of having to decide web versus mobile. Laura Aguiar was talking this morning, having to build for e-commerce. She had no alternative. it's a fight, if you want, of the software world from the side of the engineers. From the users' side, what we have to do basically is to try and get to everyone. And to make an engagement, we have to engage users with our technology, with our services, and really to obtain loyalty and give them the most important features from our applications. So in a certain way, we are moving from a world where we have to build web apps to building apps where you have something from the web and something native. And that's how, with GeneXus, we are able to build each one of these interfaces, web interface, web responsive, native in each one of the devices. And we think that with version 16, the generator is very mature to build high-end applications from the user's interface. They are very advanced. I think that the most important and interesting things are happening in the web world. There is a specific talk by Nicolas Cardellino about the status of the web. But what we are working on very strongly is in fact, it's two things. The first thing is what Google calls progressive web applications. It means that web applications should be faster, more reliable, and with a higher engagement level. It's this engagement, this loyalty of web applications. It's basically a race to try and get the level of native applications as regards the applications. And we're not to decide which one is better and which one is worse, whether progressive or native or whatever. In version 16, we've moved towards the speed of web applications, working with different low-level characteristics so that web applications can be as responsive as possible, and so that the response time is good. And then what you'll be able to do in upgrade 1 of version 16 very soon in November, you'll be able to see that any main application, any web application, you can mark it as progressive, for instance, and okay, you'll be able to say whether you need a server worker, or even if there is no connection, to give a feedback to users when they are in that situation. And they need high speed, something like call split and so on, so that the speed with which you respond to users is much higher. And you'll be able by making a click in GeneXus. So progressive web applications are part of what we're doing. Now, there are some problems, and it's that they don't work well with Safari, not even in the latest version. So that's not something that you can apply to all your applications, but it's some of the experience that you have to build. You know, those of you having Android, well, there's a lot of people, and perhaps you want to give an experience of the progressive web application. Now, on the other hand, what's happened in the web is that there are many frameworks now that are very much focused on trying to do the developers' work easier. We're not interested in that. It doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. But with GeneXus, we can do that much faster. By including user controls, you can integrate web development, as Armin showed you, much more quickly than in any other frameworks, in Angular, Vue, React, and so on. So we feel that frameworks bring about a group of, or stand on top of the web standards, and it's good for us to stand on top of them. So we are making an Angular generator, and we have chosen Angular because it's been positioned as the first option. It's positioned in the entrepreneurial domain as the strongest framework. But it's very much challenged by Vue. So most certainly we'll have other generators of this style, of this type. And we can do this because we're not only based on Angular, we are based on the HTML standards, we are being based on work component standards, and therefore everything that we are doing with Angular will be reusable in any generator, not only for web technologies, but also for other technologies. There is a talk by Alejandro Silva showing the power of the Angular generator. The most important case that it's solving is, let's suppose that you have a native app built by GeneXus. You'll be able to click on a button, press a button, and you'll have it as a progressive web application in Angular without changing a dot. You won't be able to develop any panels or anything. There is a talk by Alejandro Silva about this. We'll be releasing that this year. Now, one of the things that was very much discussed in our event, and we are working on the web, is the design systems. Now, design systems from the technical standpoint, Karina and Armin were explaining this very well. They were explaining the benefits for companies. And as we said earlier, there are large companies in the world that are creating their own design systems. There are small companies that are also creating their design systems to give consistency to the products. Now, Armin mentioned that we've already got themes and base styles to include CSS frameworks to make sites pretty. We also have stencils, which is a way to reuse interfaces. User controls that's a characteristic that we had to do it outside GeneXus, and it was something that was for experts in a certain web technology. At present, we've taken them down to all GeneXus users, and they can create user controls inside GeneXus. There is a talk about Federico Salomon and other talks as well, showing how you can, this can be really very simple. And it's not only simple and easy, but I'll be able to distribute it easily because it's in a knowledge base. I'll be able to put it in the server without having to install it in the server and so on. And the next step is to be able to create patterns in GeneXus. So once again, this will mean that you, without having to set up other patterns, you'll be able to create your own patterns. You'll be able to create other patterns, but your own as well. Now, what are patterns? Well, they are certain patterns, excuse my redundancy, generating GeneXus codes. And so they'll be able to create generators of GeneXus. And this is the short-term road ahead. Now, but this question of the multiple interfaces is not only this thing is that we are going from GUI. Our life goes behind screens. Our interfaces is to be behind a desktop, a screen, to be behind a cell, a phone. And so little by little, those are things that we had to do because of the status of technology. But there are many interfaces now that will become invisible. And we'll be able to come up to a panacea where there is going to be a zero UI. The best interface is the one that doesn't exist in many cases. So the canonic case that you may know, and I was talking about Shui, and this is also something that it's in place in China right now, is the physical stores, the physical shops by Amazon. Amazon opened some physical shops, one in Seattle. I think that there is one next week in Chicago. That is that question of the experience of going to a shopping center or a supermarket or whatever. And once you get there, you put your cell phone, you are registered, your cell phone is detected with any technology to that end. I go into the shop, I go around the shelves, I take anything that I want to buy. I may repent and return them, and I would put them in my basket. My little child would bring in something that he wants me to buy him, and then I leave. And I don't make any lines, I don't do any checkout, It simply gets to my account. They already know who I am, and through AI and through sensors, they've understood there is an invisible interface. There is no screen. There is no cashier telling me. There is no interface to scan products. There's nothing. And that type of thing is where artificial intelligence is helping us. It's not AI per se, but it's AI to help us have new experiences, to try and eliminate frictions that at present seem to us natural. I mean, it seems natural that we go through a toll station, that there is a barrier, and then it comes up automatically. Perhaps there shouldn't be a barrier. So, well, we have to start thinking which are those things. And what we've been working on is in modules of AI so that it's at hand once we think about those ideas. The most complicated about artificial intelligence is that we get ideas, not only their application. So in GeneXus, as Armin said, for the first time, we've released the module AI GeneXus, that to use it in very simple applications. I mean, simple in what they have to do. I mean, for a human being, it's nothing difficult to recognize a dog on a photograph. That seemed to be complicated for AI some time ago. Now it's not. From the standpoint of a user, that's not, obviously. So we're going to move on, trying to make these models to be implemented, not only taking consumers from the cloud, but being able to run them directly in our devices, Android or iOS. Because the level of real-time processing of those devices, Apple has just released a device that are a wonderful machine. They can run this immediately without having to be connected to a cloud provider. Now, the question of co-innovation makes us be able to make new models, and those that have a sense will become a product and will be shown to you through cognitive services, through GeneXus IE. Armin was talking about chatbots. Well, we are going from graphic user interface to conversational elements through a chat or through a voice device. We are moving from a single experience to one single device, and we are in transit to have interactions with our clients in multiple devices. Now, what happens in the enterprise world? Well, from the enterprise world, we are in transit from enterprise solutions to ecosystem solutions, what Nicolas was saying earlier this morning. We're not alone in the world, and we're part of an ecosystem. And when we are part of an ecosystem, we are no longer what we are doing monolithically in our company, but we are moving to a more distributed world. There are several architectures. They're one of the most popular ones of distributed architecture is microservices. There are several talks about how to provide microservices with GeneXus and what is it. Since we are in a distributed world, we are working very strongly on evolving the power and the definition of APIs, I mean, to what it means to evolve a system. So far in GeneXus, to evolve a system was to evolve the database, and that's all right. But what do we have to add is the API's evolution, and we are also going to have an impact on it as the evolution of our system. And we also have to evolve the characteristics, and in the next upgrades you're going to see it. The characteristics and the restrictions to make modules with GeneXus. We are going to be uploading them so that you can build modules in GeneXus in one same KB or in multiple KBs and to have interaction among them. And now, when we move from a monolithic world to a distributed world, it means that we have several parts. And what happens in those several parts, what is in transit, is that the world is no longer of a single source world of the truth of data. We have several sources of the truth of data. And clearly, we can't think that they're going to be just one single type. There's several types. They're of several types, and that's happening already. We haven't specialized a lot about the relational database, but they're there, and these ecosystems show us that we are working with NoSQL, we are working with streams, we are working with blockchains, and we are going to show you the advance, particularly in the NoSQL. I mean, the largest advance here is that not only advancing by integrating, but we put them all in the same interface. So you'll be able to do a for each on top of what you are doing, relational database. But if you have DynamoDB, you'll be able to do it if it's a non-relational database. You have a data store, that's Kafka, which is a data store of streams. I have to explain that, but all right, you can do a for each for that. And on top of a blockchain, you'll be able to do a for each. So in each one of those things, we've advanced. So I highly recommend Balotti's talking about NoSQLs and streams. Recommending a lecture would be too much, because we have over 14, 15 talks about blockchain. And the thing is, Panisa, for instance, is showing how we can have a blockchain-provided power ledger based on IBM ledger fabric. So with one single interface, we'll be able to have access to all those data stores. And we've created this interface, an extensible one, trying to incorporate more and more data stores, as we did it with OT database. There are so many things in transit that I'm sure you can think of other things that are happening in this enterprise world. But there are also other things that are clear. We have to move from programming to designing processes. We have to try and understand what is the process of connection among the players, all the players in one ecosystem. And at a lower level, we've moved from a very consistent and synchronic world to a more asynchronic and possibly inconsistent world. We can't think that when we buy in Amazon, that the stock is being consistent everywhere Amazon keeps that stock. It's approximately correct, and that's good. And so, in that world, there are two things that we're doing in GeneXus. One thing is that we are empowering BPM. BPM means that we're going to raise awareness to the fact that to live in this ecosystem, we have to formalize our business processes, and that's well known. Now, the other thing, the other essential thing, and that is attacking a new way of thinking, a new way of modeling programming, which is called event-driven applications. Let me give you a very easy example. Let me give you an example of football, a system in football. One of the events, if you use a football event, such as the application for the Mexican League, one of the fundamental issues there is scoring a goal. The goal, formalizing that goal, is an element that I'll have to formalize in GeneXus as an event with a group of properties. I mean, who scored for what team and in what minute. So there is something in the system that is distributed that says, I'm the one that publishes the goals. And then on the other hand, I may have many others, for instance, one that sends millions of notifications, as Armin said, that is in charge exclusively of that. It has a score with the goals and the data, and on that basis it will send out the notifications. And I may possibly have another one that is in charge of statistics, and so whenever there is a goal, statistics will be brought up. So in fact, what we need is that in GeneXus, we're going to give you the possibility that the one that defined the event publish this event, publish it, and the others will be able to subscribe to those events and they will get it unconnected. So these systems will move from, most certainly, in those systems, you have those demons that are there running all the time. And you may be, the demon will be asking, is there a goal? Is there a goal? Is there a goal? There's never going to be a goal by Peñarol. That's the team he doesn't belong to, obviously. But there is a goal at a certain point in time. There is a goal scored. And that's where I want to wake that system up. This means that the business models around how we are going to build our applications is going to change as well. So I'm not going to be I want to have two systems on, wondering if there is a goal, but they are going to be notified when a goal is scored. And that takes us to new experience, to new architecture. Of course, artificial intelligence in the enterprise world is something I'm going to be using for predictive analysis, classification, and so on and so forth. When I sit down in this world, we're also in transit, and we are in a world where you're going to have multiple experiences with several data store, and now it's for Oracle, for Cycle, and as well server, Java, etc. How can I test any of those things? It's practically impossible to think that I'm going to create all those servers. So containers are there for that. We are in transit in containers so that we can speed up all that testing. And one of the functions is to speed up testing. There is a talk by Sebastián Gómez talking about Kubernetes and how to fine-tune all those servers, all those containers. But we are moving towards serverless, and that means I'm not going to get worried about servers, and now there are databases that are serverless, and there are containers working serverless. So that's the transit that we are having to try to automate DevOps in a very agile way. So I've already mentioned a lot of things about these two worlds. Now, to sum up and to tell you what we are working in the short term is for these two things. For the users world, we want to have our users and our community, all of us here, can have multiple experiences as quickly and as efficiently and effectively as possible. In the enterprise world, we want to coexist in a world of ecosystems. And as I said, I think that the summary of what's happening, apart from these words, new words, is that there are many things that are in transit. And that's why we have this new cycle that Ursula was mentioning. We want to do it in an agile manner, and that's why there's a version every 2 months. So what we don't want is to be like Tom Hanks. Those who saw Terminal know that you don't want to be stagnated and stuck in one place. What basically happened to Tom Hanks was that he was stuck in an air terminal. I think that the only way to move around, get out from a terminal, is to go to the different stations, is to use the power of doing.